You are listening to Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, a podcast where three women discuss horror movies from the silent era through the 1970s. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, and Anchor. Timely, topical, terrifying. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls. I'm Jenny.
I'm Rebecca.
Betsy.
And today we're going to talk about the mummy, mostly about the 1932 Boris Karloff mummy, but you know how I like to just, run the rampant to any mummy movie that I've seen lately. And I've seen two others besides this lately. So well fun. But yeah, so 1932, Carl Laemmle was the director, producer. No, he's the producer, not the director.
Producer, yeah.
My bad. Yes.
Producer.
And Boris Karloff was the star of it. Now, here's an interesting fun fact about the writers of it. It was Nina Wilcox Putnam and Richard Scher that were originally approached by Laemmle to write a treatment for this Boris Karloff movie. And basically what Laemmle's direction was, I want more like horror movies based on novels and stuff. What can you get me? We've done The Phantom, we've done Dracula, we've done Frankenstein, what we got? And they came up with Alessandro Cagliari, or I believe his name was Cagliostro.
Yes.
Who was the made-up name of an Italian alchemist back in the day, and who was deeply into the occult. And their original 9-page treatment was actually just this alchemist, Cagliostro, who became immortal. He was 3,000 years old and living in San Francisco. And Laemmle took it and he gave it to John Balderston, who he had worked on Dracula and Frankenstein as well. And he was a journalist before he started writing for movies. And he was a journalist that was there when they opened King Tut's tomb in 1922.
Oh my.
So yeah. And he was always fascinated by it. So he took that 9-page treatment with the immortal and he flipped it into Egypt and gave us the mummy. So it was an interesting evolution when I read about it. I'm like, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, because this is one of the ones that is not really book based.
No, it is not based on a novel
at all.
One of the few that is not based on a novel at all.
Yeah, I think it's like that and Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked into that, but you're probably right. But I love Creature from the Black Lagoon as well. So
yes. Yeah.
Also another one that involves anthropologist. Like in that case, maybe paleontologist. But
we like our scientists.
Yep. But yeah, so we had the mummy, and of course it was, I think, always slated to be a Karloff movie. That was the goal to begin with.
I think it's his best. I think it's his best Karloff movie.
I love it.
Out of the ones that I've seen,
so much more in this than he gets to most anything else.
He does.
It's the woman who stars in this, whose name just
Zita Johan. Johansson.
He said he has the most soulful eyes, the saddest eyes. And I'm like, she's completely right. Every time he comes on, his eyes, I'm like, oh, good gravy. Like you could fall into those eyes. It's so good. He has such a hangdog, puppy dog expression the whole time. It's so good. I'm like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he's just, yeah. And there's that whole little flashback memory scene that's almost done like a silent film, where he's, alive as Imhotep, and the crime that leads him to becoming the mummy is shown. And he's just really dramatic in the sense of if you weren't talking, you had to emote. And it was amazing.
Beautiful.
And even with all that makeup, again, is your favorite makeup artist, Jack Pierce, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Who did that. The eyes, like you said, very, very, it just all came through his eyes. And, just amazing. And if you haven't seen it, you should. But the basic plot, you also will see reflected very much in the 1999 Mummy, but we'll get to that. But it's Imhotep, who's Boris Karloff. He is a high priest who's very much in love with a priestess of Isis, who's also, I believe, Pharaoh's daughter.
The Pharaoh's daughter, yeah.
Pharaoh's daughter.
And she dies horribly. Well, not horribly. She gets sick and dies. She dies tragically, not horribly.
Tragically.
And of course, he's very much in love with her. So he is going to resurrect her so that he can be with her, which is a huge blasphemy. You're supposed to let them die and go into the underworld and come back later, and he was going to bypass that. He gets caught and gets punished very, very horribly. And what I do love, I know I will get to this later, but in the 1932 movie, in the 1959 movie, and in the 1999 movie, every time they do the Imhotep scene with, you know, they focus on the tongue being taken out on some level, so you know that he can't scream. You see them being wrapped, and the look of horror on their face as the wrap goes over their mouth,
and then
it all stems.
And the
And then over the eyes
being the last thing to show.
Shut off. And it's like Karloff was the first one to do it, and you just see that, like, so Christopher Lee in the 59 movie, and what is that South African actor's name in
Arnold
the 1999 one?
Arnold,
thank you, Arnold Vosloo. They all took from it. They all did excellent jobs as well too, but you could just see that they were struck by the scene when Karloff did it, and that they wanted to do their best take on it. You know?
that was another one of those scenes that was great to see carry through all the different mummy versions.
Yes, all the different iterations.
The other one that I noticed, since I was just doing a quick how much of the film can I get through before we sign on today, since I forgot my timing, was when they find Imhotep in the beginning, how they find his sarcophagi. And you have the impatient archaeologist, and you have the older one who is saying, calm down, calm down. You know, much is learned. Now, this line I actually do respect. You know, more is learned from studying broken bits of pottery than all the great treasures, which I'm like, damn straight.
Yes.
Accurate.
And so they start looking at the sarcophagus, and the sacred spells have been chiseled off, and that's in the 99 one. I'm not sure about the 50s one. I haven't seen it. And
they
even though
don't have a sarcophagus for him in the 59 one, so
okay. And also even the he must have committed a horrible crime. And the flippant archaeologist, I can't remember his name, Norton. Probably got too gay with the Vestal Virgins. Which, if you translate it to modern speak, probably it got a little frisky with the Pharaoh's daughters,
exactly.
It's almost identical.
Very good.
Which is great. Yeah.
Yes, wonderful analogies, great emoting. So, as Rebecca noted, so the movie starts with them finding Imhotep's tomb, but they don't know whose tomb it is at the time because everything's been erased. So, the person's not the mummy is not named. They just find this sarcophagus and this box, which was another carryover to the 99 movie, was the box.
Yeah,
they had the scrolls and everything.
They do have the name. I noticed in the 1932 one, they do have the name like written in the coffin. They do. I just watched.
They do.
It.
Okay, I couldn't remember. I just rewatched it, but did it say Imhotep on it?
Yeah, it says
they read out Imhotep.
It's only on the sarcophagus though.
It does.
Right. So they don't
also
find it
say he's unnamed. So.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, they literally say he's unnamed. It's the curse of the unnamed, but then they read his name. So it's a foible. It's a foible, is what it is. But. It's fine, but yes, it does actually say Imhotep, but then they actually call it the curse of the unnamed.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a consistency issue there, because they also imply that they didn't realize it was Imhotep until much later. But
right,
you're right. Now that you say it, I remember them going Imhotep.
I mean,
but
you could argue maybe they didn't realize that was his name. Maybe they thought that was like something else. But it seems to me if it was in the name place,
they would have known. Names are treated differently. They a lot of times have a cartouche around them in the hieroglyphics. Yeah. Yep.
And also Imhotep is actually Egyptology wise, who's fairly well known historically. He was supposed to be, I think, one of the great architects of like.
He was.
Yes.
Yeah, they said that they borrowed the name because he was not a priest. He was an architect. He created the pyramids basically.
Yeah, he was fairly well known. So I think they would have known Imhotep was a name. Like anybody who read about King Tut's finding or Egyptology would have known that. So I don't think they
the Egyptian version of Bob the Builder, I guess.
Yes. I mean, he was the Frank Lloyd Wright of Egypt. And that's fine. He created Giza and a couple of the others. I can't remember all of the ones that he was considered responsible for, but Imhotep was like one of the big creators in that area.
Which is why they liked his name so much, and he shows up in so many, not even just the Mummy movies, but any kind of like movie where they flip back to like ancient Egypt. You'll usually see that there's an Imhotep of some sort.
I was gonna say somebody's gonna call
reference
Imhotep. Yeah.
But so they have this mummy that they know something's, not right. Like they even note the fact that he hasn't been mummified properly, and there's none of the scars for taking out his organs or any of that. And of course, you still have overactive Norton, who's like dying to get in the box, but also a little excited about the mummy. And
he's the me of archaeology. He's like,
what's in the box? No.
And you have the assistant archaeologist who is like, hey, look, don't open the box.
Muller.
He was not an archaeologist. He was an occultist.
I was
doctor.
Okay, all right.
I was brought in as a consultant, but yes,
Dr. Mueller. Okay,
yeah,
all right. I wasn't sure. I just assumed he was
it's fine.
Archaeologist.
The only reason I know that is because they bring him up as being a doctor of the occult like 3 times.
I was going to say, at one point he even says, he even says, I'm not an archaeologist. I'm a doctor of the occult. Okay. And I was like, well, that's specific.
You do have to love that. Yeah. Oh, what was the other? So the Dr. Wemple is the actual archaeologist on the thing there. I keep forgetting his name. I should remember it because I think of the Wemples as very wimpy and flaccid characters in my opinion. But Wemple and Mueller go outside because Mueller wants to convince Wemple not to open this box because it says a curse on it, which is also again carried over to the 1999 movie. It just basically says if you open this box, you're going to die. And the box was also found at the foot of a statue of a god, though not the same god between the 2 movies. Yeah. But so while they're outside discussing it, is it Norton is the assistant archaeologist?
Yeah.
Starts fucking around with box and the scroll in it. And starts reading the scroll. And of course, this brings Imhotep to life. And he walks over and grabs the scroll, I believe.
He just puts his hand on the scroll like he's reading. I thought it was funny because it looks like he's like, "Oh, where are you at?"
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he takes it though, because they note later that it's found again in the museum.
Yeah. What I appreciate is that they don't actually show like the whole mummy. You're sort of left to your imagination. They show like trailing bandages and whatnot and little glimpses, but never like the whole creature.
Aside from when he was in the
beginning,
but right, they don't show him moving, which was really
cool. Once he's
that
alive,
they show the eyes open, and then they flash away, and then you see a hand.
Small movements.
Yeah.
And then
really well done.
Shoot ahead a little bit. Years later, Norton has lost his mind, and it no longer works in the field of archaeology.
I was like,
he's lost his mind, and he died from the insanity, essentially.
I missed that part, but
it does.
Who played Norton? I was like, I mean, he's okay, but he's not the best actor I've ever seen. And then he went crazy, and that laughter is exactly why they hired that man. I have never heard hysteric laughter to the hysterics that man laughed. It is one of the most disconcerting noises I've ever heard, and it lasted a really long time.
Yes,
an inordinate amount of time. I'm like,
that actor's name. I love this name, Bromwell Fletcher.
But
it's a great name.
Laughter was insane, and I was like, "Oh, that's why they hired this guy." Because I was like, I mean,
and he was in a lot of random horror movies, but he would have been an excellent Renfield, and I don't think he ever played that.
Agree.
Oh my God, you're right.
He'd
have been amazing because that laugh was disconcerting. I'm like, oh, okay. That's going on a long time. I mean, he is real crazy right now, and you can tell. I just had to say that because that laugh really messed me up for a minute. I'm like,
there's a line in it, something like he was laughing when they found him. He died laughing in that straitjacket.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, there.
Yeah, it is a phenomenal laughter. It's just you're like, okay, yep.
You're like, yeah, he's lost it.
Where he laughs and then and you're like, oh, that's hard to do for any amount of time, and he did it for a really long time. Like, well done, you, sir.
I wonder if he might have passed out after this.
I mean, seriously, he was like,
God help him. Literally, the director asked him to do it. Yeah, God help him if he asked the director, said, let's do another take. Oh, come on, really?
Yeah.
Right. So after all that happens, and they like go home sort of defeated because, most of their fine walked away. They had stuff, but just it wasn't that. Then they shoot at what, 10 years later,
10
maybe. I
years.
think they said
Yeah,
it.
Yes, 10
I
years
think they
later.
said
And
10
there's
years.
Wempel's son,
Yes.
Frank Rempel, who's
Baby
leading his
Rempel.
own, leading his own dig, not finding anything, and enter Ardeth Beg, who's behind me, who is as we could guess, because you can see the features, so you know that this is the mummy.
Yeah.
If you
And
don't
he's
know
the
that
main
this is the
character,
mummy,
you know this.
I
you're
mean,
just not paying
also,
attention.
they
Yeah.
did a really good job of making his neck seem dry. Oh, you need lotion real bad, real bad right here, please. And I think they did it on purpose to make him look
moisturize me.
A little crusty on the edges, but
he's the mummy. He came from the sands. He should look, thanks, Bob. He should look a little dry and desiccated. And I thought they did a good job on that. Because
Jack Pierce again, he just, they mentioned it's he didn't make what an actual mummy would look like. He made what you imagined a mummy would look like, especially one that was walking around later.
Yes.
And I can't argue that at all.
No,
especially with how gaunt Karloff's face looked in that too. Hi, Bob. Yeah. Hi. I heard a rumor that Karloff shot it without dentures. I don't know if he had his teeth at that time. I could completely be pulling that out of the air. So,
well, avid listeners, the whole one of you that might be listening to our podcast, look it up. Let us know. Did he have dentures out for this or not?
I'll be honest. Didn't hear that one. What I heard is that most people assumed that he was quite big because, of course, he played Frankenstein. And, of course, in Frankenstein, he was quite big. But that's because
he had
him in
4-inch
and had him wearing padding. So in this one, you can actually see he's very slight built. He's a small dude.
And he's not super tall. He was only 5'11", which is not, don't get me wrong, that's tall. But when you think about Christopher Lee,
right,
who played the mummy, he was 6'5". Lon Chaney played the mummy, he was 6'7". You know what I mean? So compared to these other actors, he's kind of short.
Right. He is, and apparently slight built his whole career. He was just a small man.
And injured his back permanently when he did Frankenstein. So he was a very limited actor physically because of it.
He had real problems from that, which it's horrible. Brendan Fraser, from doing some of his own stunts.
From the
third mummy.
The mummy series.
I thought it was the third
one. Oh, it might be the third one. That really messed him up.
It doesn't matter. One of the mummy movies jacked his back up and it almost ended his career. So,
he was almost paralyzed.
Oh my God.
It was bad, real bad.
Yeah.
I didn't know the severity of it. I just knew that he was causing ongoing issues.
I mean, he probably had other injuries from other stunts he did too in other movies.
Sure.
But the one that really, and like I said, I think it would almost make the most sense that it had to have been the third one, because otherwise he wouldn't have been able, I think, to do the third one. So.
Yeah.
So I think, and you guys again can look this up on Google, that was the third mummy movie where he did some stunt. I think it was flying out of something where it just hit him in the back wrong and it went
awry.
Really horribly.
Yeah,
probably, because I can't think of anything in The Mummy 2 that was that outstanding as far as stunts go.
But it doesn't always have to be something that dynamic. It could be anything.
That's true. It can be. Oh, I fell down wrong.
As we get older, we know the truth of this. Slept wrong. The pillow was not shaped right. Anything, but But Brendan Fraser was an extremely physical actor, so he did a lot of his own stunts. And sadly paid a huge price. But I'm sorry, we love to digress.
We digress.
We all love the Brendan Fraser 1999.
We do.
I was going to say, let me just be honest. That is probably one of my favorite movies. If you were to put it on, I would just sit and watch it. I don't even care.
Mm-hmm.
So
being able to watch it recently on the big screen at Grandview Theater was fantastic.
Amazing, especially with the yummy drinks they made.
Those are so good. I hadn't watched it for quite some time. And it's when you have that space, you just forget how good the dialogue is and the patter and the pacing and everything. But anyway, we were discussing the 1932 Mummy.
So the 1932 Mummy, which so this is, I think, one of the reasons why I love the 1932 Mummy, and I can't, like I always say that I watch it and I'm like, what is it about this movie but I think it's because it just provided the amazing platform that created The Mummy 1999. And that combined with the piercing eyes and the emotions coming out of Karloff, and just, it oddly even kind of cast a woman sort of in a heroine spot for the 1930s.
She was,
and actually
for the 1930s, I think she was very forward.
Yes.
In a forward
still annoying
way, but she was working within the limits and mores of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so Zita Johan playing Ellen Grosvenor,
something like that. Helen. Let's just call her Helen.
Yeah, half Egyptian, half English, also reflected in The Mummy, 1999. But in this one, she is the daughter of the governor of the Sudan, who is staying as a guest in Cairo, I believe, with Dr. Mueller, and happens to be the reincarnation of Ankh Sunam. What do they say? They call her Ankh Sunamun in this one, I believe.
Yeah, yes.
1999, it's the Noxunamun. This one's Ankh Sunamun.
Similar, basically same name, just
a different pronunciation.
Yeah,
nobody speaks ancient Egyptian anymore, so you can do what you want with it. But she physically is a very interesting woman. You know what I mean? Like, she's gorgeous, but also has like this weird posture thing going on, and just I love it because her gorgeousness is imperfection, if that makes any sense. Like, she has like her head almost looks like the Queen of Hearts in the sense that it seems outsized for the rest of her body, because she has a very tiny body, and you just have to see her, but she's still gorgeous. It's like the flaws in it, I just think it's amazing.
I just wanted her to stand up straight.
My husband was one of the things that would make me crazy.
Stand up straight, square your shoulders.
Look at her again, because my husband said it and he's right. She looks like Drew Barrymore, to the point that I was like, is she related to Drew Barrymore?
Her face does.
Yeah.
Yes, her face looks like
you're right.
Like to a weird degree. And I was like, is she a Barrymore? She's not. But I looked. So I was like, are we sure? But yeah, she's very.
Oh, sorry, but I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway,
before we even get to Zita Johnson and Ellen Grosvenor, we have Frank Wemple, who gets approached by Ardith Bey.
Yes.
Who is the mummy. And Ardith Bey says, that Wemple and his buddy are talking about how they've had no luck finding anything, and they're all upset about that anyway. And Ardith Bey is like, I know where there's a tomb. We are being, and I don't know if this is true, I did not fact check this at the time, but Ardith Bey has said that the reason why he himself can't go dig up this tomb is because he is Egyptian, and Egyptians are not allowed to dig up their own dead.
I think that's more of a spiritual thing than it is a physically they're not allowed to do it thing. I think it's more like they don't dig up their own dead, which
could be true, but this was a guy who flaunted convention to begin with, so I don't know if it was like some mix of it, like maybe spiritually they weren't supposed to, and it was enforced physically that they weren't, like they get in trouble for it.
That's kind of weird though, because you would think that Egypt would want to keep, because then when they dig it up, they have to give it to the Cairo Museum. So why wouldn't they just let Egyptians dig it up rather than have it go to the British? Because the British had been stealing their stuff for years. Yes,
which is interesting, because that was the other thing I liked about this movie. They pointed that out. Like there's, the original Dr. Wemple says, we don't steal things, which is not quite true. British museums do not steal.
False.
Yeah, you were. But anyway.
Yeah, you were.
It's like, we do this for science and stuff. Yeah. So, which I wonder if that was not the writer who, when they were, that had witnessed the opening of King Tut's tomb, wanted to put it in there that what happened with the stuff was wrong, perhaps, and wanted to make a commentary about the fact.
I feel like there was definitely a bit of commentary there, because seriously, young Wemple says, the fact that we couldn't keep it on, he's like, well, we made an agreement with Cairo that they could keep their own pieces. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. And then, even Eleanor, or I keep forgetting her name, because like I said, it was just, I keep thinking about Oxenoon. But, Eleanor Grosvenor or whatever her name was.
Helen.
Zita Johan, I know that name,
yeah.
Johan. She even makes a point did you really need to go through this woman's stuff and unwrap her body? Isn't there something wrong with you? She also gets flippant about him trying to find lovers, digging them up, but I'll let Rebecca talk about that when we get closer to that point. But,
I have a few notes on dialogue.
Yeah, but So I agree. I really think that the writer was trying to make a point about, the plundering of Egypt's artifacts. And I think that was really phenomenal for the time, especially. I mean, we're looking at
Yeah.
Oh
1932. So
yeah,
this is literally 10
1932.
years after King Tut's tomb was found. And
Truly.
all that went to the British Museum in England. Yes. But Artefae says, yes, you need to dig it up for him. They make the agreement that whatever is found goes to the Cairo Museum. It does not actually go into the British Museum. And lo and behold, there's the untouched, unplundered tomb of Ankh-Sunamun. And of course, Artefae knew right where it was because he was in there trying to raise her body
Right?
from the dead. So it's why he was punished.
Yep.
So they find it, they return triumphant to Cairo and put the display on. And that's when you run into the reincarnated Ankh-Sunamun character,
Mm.
Eleanor
Which is
Grosvenor, or whatever. her name is.
Helen.
Helen, thank
Helen.
you.
Yes. As in Helen of Troy.
I just like it escapes my mind because it's just,
Yeah. But,
like I said, I find it interesting because she's a heroine, but she also is not, so
I mean, she's very
you
much
have the whole scene.
she is within the bounds of a movie shot in 1932.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, she literally saves herself.
Oh,
So you gotta get that.
absolutely.
But up until that point, she is flat out the victim with some nice witty repartee.
Damseled hard.
Yeah.
Hard. To the point of like, you're wasting away to nothing. You're going to die. And she's like, give me shiny things.
Let me put on makeup in my pretty dress before I die.
I don't think I remember that quote. I said it like,
I can't remember. I can't really fault that one though, because it'd be like, I don't want to look that bad.
I do love it. It's just like,
Let me at
it's
least
forgive feminine
try.
vanity, I think is what she refers to it as. But
Mhm.
even that didn't bother me so much as the I must go to him. Oh, I don't want to. I must go to him. I'm like, okay, can we? But I did love it. So Ardith Bay ends up in the Cairo Museum at some point. Dr. Wimple, the elder, runs into him. They even keep I love this too, because again, the weird throwbacks that you see from the 1999 movie, like if you haven't watched 32 one recently, you would miss. So when the elder Dr. Wimple runs into Ardith Bay, he goes to touch his shoulder or shake his hand, and Ardith Bay goes, Eastern superstition.
I do not like to be touched. Silly Eastern superstition.
Which you hear in the 1999 version, only the mummy doesn't say it. Benny says it for him. But it's like the same exact line.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Ardith Bay stays in the museum and reads more from the scroll, which sticks Helen into a trance, which I love the trance she goes into because she's in the middle of dancing rather awkwardly, because I wonder if she has scoliosis, the actress, actually, because of the way she looks when she's dancing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And she's dancing with this guy, and Ardith Bay, Imhotep, is reading from the scroll, and all of a sudden she just, excellent acting, by the way. You just see her whole face just blank out.
Over. Yeah.
And then she heads to the coat check because that's how the trance works.
She's like, I gotta go.
So I'm gonna get my coat first. In the trance, still she's able to hail a taxi and tell them where she wants to go. And then is so overcome that she's, repeating words from the scroll that Imhotep is reading, and she gets to the Museum of Antiquities. And I love the pound. That's what really annoys me, is the pounding on the door. So she goes to try to get in the museum. It's of course locked. And the Wemples were just leaving, so they're in the car and they see her pull up, and she's at the door like,
I have to get in. I have to get in.
Must get in.
Yeah. So she was functional enough to get her coat and hail a cab, but she's not functional enough to find another way in.
Yeah, and I mean, not even knock hard on the door though. So it's just like, which is also the thing that bothers me, because dude knew the door was locked. What was his plan? She
had to crawl through a window. Who knows?
And clearly he was not answering her limp twisted knock. I mean, it was just awful to watch. It was so I
mean, you're right, but also
wonderfully comical in my mind. But it was also please. I mean, at least a fist. Come on.
Yeah.
And then of course she dramatically faints at the door. And Frank Wemple, the younger, picks her up, and she ends up on the couch, in the Wemple's house. And Dr. Mueller using wonderful deductive reason, he finds out from the guy, the doorman, that she went to the Museum of Antiquities. He goes to the Museum of Antiquities. They're like, yeah, they drove off with the Wimples. He ends up at the Wimples place, and they're old friends from the Imhotep dig. So
I was gonna say, and he knows him, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's great that they have the strange woman on their couch. Well, meanwhile, creepy ass Frank Wemple is like staring at the passed out woman, like,
hey,
just looming over.
I mean,
yeah.
The fact that he's like, I'm in love with her. I'm like, you've seen her for a second and a half. You've literally never heard her say a word.
You've known her for
No. He heard her say, "Let me in," and then pass out.
Yeah.
Or I must get in. Whatever.
It's obvious this woman is an obsessive compulsive. I must have her. She could do so many good things for me.
I don't know. I'm just gonna say that maybe it's the difference between men and women, or being into women sexually or not. I don't know, but like if I saw a dude acting that way, and unfortunately that's what I'm attracted to is men, I can't get over it. I really wish I could, but I like men. If I saw a man acting like that, I'd be like, I'm gone. This is crazy. Crazy is bad for Jenny.
You're a lunatic.
Can't do it.
No.
And yet you see example after example of men being like, oh, a crazy, delicate woman. This will be awesome. Like, I mean, I don't know. She's bipolar as hell to me. I probably would have been like, nope.
I like my women just a tiny bit unhinged. Do you know what? There are all kinds of rock songs about liking your women a tiny bit unhinged because they're crazy in the sack. So,
I don't know. Crazy dick is no better than normal dick. I'll just tell you that right now. So maybe to these men, crazy pussy is better than normal pussy. I got nothing. I don't know. But
as you say this, my dog is trying to hump the cat, and I'm like, would you stop?
Well, that's some crazy dick.
into
probably a bipolar pussy. So we're on that note, let's move on.
Toby
passed out on the couch
time to time.
Yeah. So Helen eventually comes to, and there's Frank looming over her, sort of. I mean, like he's sitting in a chair, but he's clearly anxiously looking over and kind of drooling,
watching her really closely.
It's a little unsettling, and I give this actress credit. This is kind of why I like the character, because she gets up and she starts doing that cringe away thing, like, okay, creepy, what are we doing here?
We're trying to create the space.
Like, oh, yeah, hello, I don't know you. Who the hell are you?
Who are you?
Staring at me while I was sleeping. How did
Which comes into our dialogue section. So I'll let you guys, go hit that dialogue because it was amazing.
Because you have the whole repartee scene there. You're trying to build the romantic interest because, of course, we can't have a movie without romantic interest from Hollywood.
Well, I mean, especially if it has a female character and she's either going to be a villain or a romantic interest. There's not much else going on.
Yeah, that's true. They don't have a lot of flexibility in their roles.
I'm going to put a pin in this and come back to it in a minute because there actually is I have a thought on this that I read that I was like, that's icky and I hate it.
And she's wondering like, what was I doing? And he's telling her what happened, and she's like, what the hell was I doing at the museum? And he goes, well, and she goes, no, I don't want to hear about it. I just like cuts him off right there.
I want to know why I was there. Clearly some wrong shit happened.
Forget it. I don't want to hear about it.
You know what? I changed my mind.
Go. No. And the whole, he goes in and he starts talking about his experiences with the mummy, the find, and finding this.
And clear, not Imhotep.
Yeah, we should clarify that. Because there are two finds in the movie. The second one with Alex and the Moon. And
Imhotep
unwrapping anytime. He's so casual about the unwrapping, and it really actually makes me angry. And she's like, how could you? And he's like, oh, well, we had to. And I just keep getting more and more mad because I'm like, you're doing this so flippantly and to me a desecrating manner. I mean, we're lucky now.
You can X-ray now.
We have so many imaging techniques that they don't have to rewind them. Rewind them.
Unwind them.
Unwind.
Unwrap.
Thank you.
Be kind. Blind your mummy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, that they don't have to unwrap them or anything. And so, yeah, the just his casual disregard for the spiritual aspects, I was frothing at the mouth at. And every time it gets me. Oh.
Yeah. And I do love that she calls it out.
Oh, yeah.
She does so well, too.
But it does bring us up to one of our favorite lines where he talks about how her face resembles, that he fell in love with the princess and how her face resembles the princess.
Yeah,
and so Rebecca, I'll let you. What does she say back to him?
Do you have to open graves to find girls to fall in love with? And I'm like, oh, by any stretch of the imagination, you're gonna need some aloe for that burn.
Oh.
Yeah, you're gonna need some aloe for that burn.
That is.
Mm-hmm. And there was also another part, and I don't remember the full line, where she talks about him making love to her, and I'm like, oh, this is a pre-code movie. I forgot about that.
Yes.
Some of the dialogue probably would not have passed enforcement past the censors, or mention of like off-screen deaths and what have you would not have been copacetic with that. And I was like, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So.
But Betsy, what you put a pin in, did you still want to go back to that?
I was just going to say that I read that. So Boris Karloff is of Indian descent. He's not hugely of Indian descent.
British Indian.
His real name's Sir William Henry Pratt, I believe. But
yes, but he had enough of an Indian background that if you notice, he is never kissed on screen. And that's because they considered him a person of color, and it wouldn't have been accepted by the censors.
Wow.
This is actually Bela Lugosi is the same way. He was also considered a person of color, and they couldn't allow him to kiss a woman on screen. So you were wondering why, like, the mummy never actually kisses his love on screen. This is why. It's because they couldn't get it past the censors because he was considered a person of color, which I was so incensed in delay for him. I'm like, what?
So yeah, like actually that's interesting. So I'm gonna make one other point about this dialogue scene between Helen and Frank, whatever his name is. Frank.
Do.
And then I actually want to bring up another actor that shows up shortly thereafter in these scenes. But so Frank also says, like, you know, starts professing his love to Helen, and Helen at one point starts laughing. And he's like, you can do anything you want. I'm summing up, but I'm paraphrasing, but it comes out with, but you can't laugh at me. And I'm like, oh, an early incel here. You can't laugh. You can reject me, but don't laugh at me.
But
you're being ridiculous. You know, like you fell in love with a dead woman, and now you love me because I look like her. That's pretty fucking funny. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and
you deserve to be laughed at.
What I would laugh at you if you weren't being ridiculous.
What I love, though, is that this poor woman is stuck between two people who are literally in love with a dead woman. The man who's modern day, who's in love with the corpse that he just happened to dig up, and the man from the past who is in love with the corpse that they just happened to dig up. Not a single one of them loves her for just her.
Yeah.
Well, that's because neither of them know who she is.
No,
they know nothing about this.
They know nothing about her. And both of them are like, I love you. And I'm like, this poor woman needs an intervention and better men.
Yes, definitely better men.
Yeah.
But so what comes up soon in the scene is like Ardith Bey Imhotep ends up at the same apartment as well. And a character lets him in who's known as the Nubian. And that actor is Noble Johnson, also known as Mark Johnson, I believe. Mark Noble, sorry. It's Noble Johnson is what he's credited as in this. He also goes by Mark Noble. And again, also an actor of color. And he shows up in so many movies. But what he did was he became a producer, and he started his own production company, Lincoln Motion Pictures. And what it was strictly race pictures. So he would show African Americans as actual people and not caricatures. That's what all his movies were. And like, I think the only person that was not a person of color in this production company, they had one director that was white. And and all he does in this movie, all Noble Johnson does, he's the newbie, and he has no speaking lines. A gorgeous looking man. He's like 6 foot something, 215 pounds. He looks great features. I was like, ooh. But he just, he opens the door, closes the door, looks intimidating, stirs a pot, and like stands loomingly and then cowers off. That's all he does. He does
like the quiet
work.
servant.
Yeah, but I mean, still very emotive, very physical. Presence is just really like, he shows up in the movie and you're like, who's that? You know what I mean? But I mean, an amazing guy. I mean, like, just the fact that that he's got this production company off the ground. And I think it was in the late 20s, early 30s that he started it. I could be wrong. It might even be late 1900s, early 20s. But amazing. And I read that and I was like, yes. So, and I think they mentioned him in Horror Noir as well, but I could be wrong. Or at least the Lincoln Motion Picture Company might get mentioned in it. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
Oh no, because I mean, that's kind of important. The very fact that they didn't even give them names, they were like the Nubian, the servant, the like. I mean, it's of the time, and I know that, but also like it kind of.
That's a thing though. In more minor roles, you often have it listed as the driver. Or,
well, there's one guy who's credited in the credits as being some kind of a Saxon warrior, but that's actually from a scene that was completely cut from the film, and he's still credited.
Okay, so I was wondering about that because I came across that on Wikipedia for this, and I was just
he was completely
going through my memories of the movie. I'm like, what the fuck?
Apparently, at one point there had been a point when they showed like the Imhotep getting arrested and then getting mummified. There was actually a small sequence during that where they actually showed them being reincarnated through the years.
Okay, all right.
Up until the 19.
Okay, so we have some deleted scene action going on there.
Yes, and those were all deleted out, but there was like a progression of them being reincarnated over and over again into these different bodies. That was cut, but that was part of the reason that Zita actually signed on, because she firmly believed in reincarnation and she loved the idea of the reincarnation plot.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember reading that to some effect.
Yes, but they ended up cutting it for length.
She was an interesting actress. Her last film was 1986 Raiders of the Living Dead.
Lovely.
So I think we know what we need to do for our next movie night.
Oh yeah.
Is we need to have a hangout and watch that one. She also taught acting to people with learning disabilities, which I thought was an interesting
awesome.
Sideline.
That's very cool. Wow. That's ahead of her time, because that's something that still
definitely
there's a problem with.
Very much so. Which is interesting because that's the thing that makes me like her despite all the craziness, because it just there's something about how she portrays this character that seems a little tougher than what they wanted. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
There's just
absolutely. I think I agree.
If you read through the roles that she turned down, this woman was a tough cookie. Let me just say that. Like, she turned down some crazy stuff, like things that other women would have been like, oh, of course I'll do this role. And she's like, no, she's a wimp. No. And I'm like, I love you for this. Thank you so much. You're amazing.
I find it interesting also, while she was married 3 times, she never had any children. I'm like, hey, one of my people, perhaps. Yeah, it could be anything from infertility to
didn't want to,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at any rate, just interesting people in this movie for sure.
Which
I think carried over to the 99 cast.
This cast was shockingly interesting. Like, I learned a lot of things going through it. But
and, which I wanted to like, so Zita I liked, Boris I liked, Crazy Norton I thought was excellent. Mueller was interesting. Also, the connection with the guy who played Dr. Mueller, that's Edward Van Sloan. He was Van Helsing in Dracula.
Yeah, and basically they said they Frank him over to play the same role.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the guy who played Frank was Harker.
Yes, he was
in Dracula.
He was.
Which I have to rewatch it because I kind of recall Harker being kind of a milquetoast character in that movie as well. And like this,
Oh, he
I don't
was.
know. Like I said, he just the guy.
I will say, like,
the
his character,
the actor, just
his
was
character
not.
was milquetoast, but I also thought like he cut a dashing figure. If that makes
But
sense,
he's pretty.
that's I'm like he was a beautiful man, and learning
He's
about
pretty.
him. Like I went to his page and I did a prediction. So I went to his page and it said he had been married once for 3 years in 1929 to 1931, and I was like, oh, he was gay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Which is not the like. He just the character comes across as very blah. You know,
I was
he's
gonna
not
say,
very dynamic, and I don't know that that's the actor's fault, but he's just not a very interesting.
I think that he was told that he needed to
he's
be
just
meh. I mean, honestly, I think he was given direction that made him kind of meh. But I think,
it might have been they told him to stay in the background more than anything.
right, because it's not about you.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah, I mean, he's a supporting character at best.
Yes,
he's the pretty face,
he's beautiful.
which is also one of the reasons why I kind of like the Mummy, where normally you have the hero guy. He's just the pretty face, and the hero guy is really the girl. You know, because literally when he shows up to save the day, he does almost nothing.
I mean,
But,
I do appreciate.
This is the 1932 version.
Yeah, the
he does
1932.
he does nothing. He does
I was gonna
nothing.
say, honestly, in the
So-
1999 version, Brendan Fraser just swashed all those buckles. All those buckles are swashed by
He
him.
does.
Whole different world. And on the same
Yeah,
note, you have more
entirely.
equal pairing too, because even though Brendan Fraser is clearly the classic save the day kind of person, you know, Rachel Weisz's character is no,
She's
You know,
not.
she doesn't sit back and do nothing. She
Yeah.
saves herself, she saves them, she uses her mind, she gets it through, you know. So it's a much more pairing of equals, which
Yeah,
you know,
it is.
thank God,
It's
because it was
clear.
the 90s,
Yeah,
so
it's clear that in the 99 version they both have their own expertise
mhm.
Yes.
and they trust each other to do the best in their relevant fields, be it swashbuckling or translating or what have you.
Find the right spell or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
But Emotep walks into the apartment. He runs into the Nubian, Noble Johnson, and then you can see there's an interaction where now the Nubian is subservient to Emotep. He runs into Helen, sees her as Anxunamen. Helen reacts to Emotep as well right away, which I give her credit because Karloff is not looking pretty as Emotep.
Nope. Nope.
And
He
she
is
does an excellent job of acting like she's fascinated by him in not a horrifying way, but like in a romantic way, like entranced.
I know
What is
you.
about this man. Oh no.
Yeah, it's very much I know you.
I know you, I
you're
want you
significant.
even.
I don't understand how I do, but I know you and I have known you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then that's when they pretty much Mueller and Wemple revealed, you know, that they call out Emotep for being Emotep, and they basically trick him into like admitting that he was the one that had taken the scroll to begin with and is the mummy.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
We know what you
Emotep
are.
leaves, and you just start having this thing where like Helen is more and more being overshadowed and they're trying to look out for her. And there's this scene, the original what happened to the dog scene.
Yeah.
Where she gets a call from Frank Wemple and she's like, no, I'll be here all day. And then suddenly she's compelled to go out and she takes this beautiful German Shepherd. I wonder if it might have been Moose.
They don't show him very much, it could have been.
Maybe Lon Chaney loaned her Moose. I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's a very pretty German Shepherd dog you see for like 3 seconds in the movie. And
I love the suit she's wearing at that time.
oh yeah.
It was just perfect.
It's a lovely suit.
Mhm.
But yeah, so she ends up going to Emotep and lets the dog slide away with the servant, sort of. And they stare in a pool, and that's when Emotep takes her through the past and lets her know the whole story of why they know each other. Of course, she's in a trance state and has no recollection afterwards. But what I love about this version of it compared to the 99, well, I don't really love it. What's interesting to me about this version of compared to the 99 version, in this version, it's all Emotep. Like they don't really talk about how she might have been in love with him or not. Like it's implied, but like she never asked him to try to resurrect her. She didn't ask him to go risk himself this way. Nothing. He just chooses to do it and then suffers repercussions. And as a result, for the rest of the movie, he expects her to fall in line because he suffered for her. But it's like, but who asked you to?
Yeah.
Did I say raise me from the dead? No.
And
Did I say risk having to become a mummy over this? No. I probably didn't want to have my tomb desecrated or my death desecrated by your ass, but you did it anyway, didn't you? You know?
Yeah. I saw that brought up like in another review. It's that, he goes through all this with all this devotion, and he expects in the end that she's going to be right there along with him.
It's
Right.
like the nice guy syndrome. You put the nice coins in,
Yeah,
you expect the
yeah.
girl. Did she ask you? Did she say that if you do this,
That's
I'll
true.
do that? No. You just decided you were going to put the time in and expected her to capitulate because you did something that she didn't
But
ask.
I've been nice 10 times. I deserve my whatever reward that is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the 99 version, it's a pairing of equals.
Yes, it is.
Anoxenun
On both
and
sides.
Imhotep
On both
fought
sides.
it. They were
Yes.
both in on it. It's clear that she's like, yes, I'm going to do this and take the fall, and you're going to resurrect my ass, and we're going to be together forever. Like, she was a willing partner in that one. I thought that was a whole new story, and I liked that a lot more.
Yeah, they really provided, and I mean, it's a sign of the times, but they really, well, actually, it's not. 1999 wasn't necessarily famous for this, but it is a
No.
sign of the times that they really did give all of the women some kind of a sense of
Force.
like what is the word?
Partnership. They were much more active. They weren't passive. I don't know how else you want to put that.
Agency.
Yeah.
Agency. They all
Agent,
have
there
a
we
sense
go.
of agency. Sorry, my husband was telling me from off camera. I'm like, what's the word?
Thanks, Seth.
Thanks, Seth.
Our honorary
agency.
member of the podcast.
They have the honorary fourth member who sits off to the side and keeps me words. But seriously, they have a sense of agency that this one she has to a degree, but it's not as, it's really late in the game that she kind of is like, wait a minute, I don't have to do this. Which I appreciate that it ever comes, but in the original, it's very much that all of those women have the agency. Oksana Moon had the agency, and Evelyn has the agency to do kind of whatever they want, even to the point that Evelyn goes to look up or to find this tomb and sets off on this quest by herself, well, with her brother, but still.
Yeah, but she's the motivator. It's she's not tagging along.
Mhm.
She's the one who's acting.
Let's be honest, if there's a damsel in that movie, it's Jonathan.
For sure.
I think you're right.
Who I adore, but he's the damsel.
Oh, yes.
But so she gets tranced out. She goes, she learns everything that happens, and then it gets wiped from her brain because Imhotep doesn't want her current incarnation to understand what's coming just yet. He just wanted to like wake up the memories in her. Mostly it was move the plot along kind of piece, but it worked. It was pretty.
Good job for
It
that.
was a gorgeous scene. I liked it. Aside from the fact, like I said, she was definitely not a partner in that. And then all of a sudden you hear the dog cry off screen, and she's like, "Where's my dog?"
Yeah.
Which this is a problem I have. So we all have dogs. If I'm walking somewhere with my dog and my dog's scared, now short of like obviously reasonable thing that's happening, I might drag my dog along to get it past the thing that it's scared about, because that might be the most reasonable thing. But I certainly wouldn't take it to a house that was scared of it and then let somebody else take it. You know what I mean? Like if I had to go in that house, my scared dog is staying with me because it's my dog and there's something wrong here. And instead she lets it go. Of course, she's being tranced. So
I was
who
gonna
knows,
say,
maybe if
I
I
mean,
had the old
dead
So
mummy.
she's not entirely in control of her own
right.
faculties.
I mean,
So,
I like to think of that as
She's been-
self-preservation, though, and I might hold on to my dog anyway. But she hears this
if
terrible
you think
noise,
about it,
and
if you-
you hear the dog crying off screen, and she's like, "Where is he?" And it was like the most, not really quite caring. Where is he? I don't know if she just is not a dog person, actress-wise, or if she just wasn't able to emote like the panic you would feel if you heard your dog panic, crying in pain. Like I would just be like, "Where is he?" I'd be like, "Where the fuck is my dog?" I'd be pushing things out of my way. I mean, like the swearing not necessary, but I'd be a lot more emotive about finding my
my
dog.
impressions of her reactions in the scene are like somebody who's been roofied.
Yeah, I guess.
Your
See, I'm thinking she's still
reactions and emotions are muted. You're not
still
really, you figure out that
confused
she's
by-
not altogether there.
Which is still tranced over, but I'm still like,
Yeah.
I mean, I
he probably had to retransfer after that too, because when she finally goes back to her apartment and there's Frank there, and she gets a little snappy with him because he's like, I called, you're supposed to be here. She's like, I was stuffy, I can
I
walk
didn't
where I
want to
want.
stay inside all day.
You're not the boss of me. And then she's like, and I took the dog with me. Now clearly the dog is not with her now. And he's like, okay, where's the dog?
Yeah.
Which is funny because if you ever watched a horror movie involving a dog where the dog suddenly disappears, reappears, disappears, reappears, and like if the movie's bad, what you'll notice more than anything is where's the dog.
right.
Lords of Salem is an excellent example of this, where the whole movie is just not very good, and you spend most of it going, okay, well, so where's the dog?
Yeah.
But then she suddenly remembers that something terrible happens to the dog, and he's dead.
It's dead.
It involved a cat. But she's like, I can see it, but I can't. And yeah, so apparently Bast kills dogs.
I mean,
Nope.
All right.
Yeah.
Love
That's
it.
one of those that you just go, okay, and you move past it.
That's I'm like, I
Because
don't
it's a
love
movie,
that, but
and it's fiction.
I mean, I guess Bast, Guardian Anubis. I don't know. Okay. We'll just move along from there. But this is when Helen gets worse and worse. So she ends up being bedridden and being watched over by the Wimples. Which, by the way, sorry, I forgot this part. The elder Dr. Wimple died. The Nubian, he was trying to burn the scroll. The Nubian took the scroll from him, and then Imhotep from a distance basically caused him to have a heart attack and die.
I liked
the elder Dr. Wimple
the
had died
part,
long before this.
the long distance
Cursing.
force heart attack effect.
And Dr. Mueller has
gives it
given
that.
the younger Frank Wimple an Isis medallion to protect him from those evil sendings, which the younger Frank Wimple is not understanding this, and he wants to protect Helen with it. And he's like, yeah, no, Helen doesn't need it, because basically he's going to keep her alive until she comes to him, and then that's a whole different thing. So he's not going to try to kill her from a distance. Yep. But of course he listen.
I liked the more supernatural aspect of Imhotep when he is doing his attacking from afar. I thought it lends more of a psychological horror aspect, to the movie.
And he had that pretty scarab ring that it seemed to center through. It's really nice.
Yeah.
But Helen is just getting worse and worse and worse, and she's now bedridden and going through horrible bipolar stages of, I hate these people. Let me go. Oh no, I don't want to go. I really don't. And I know I don't. And then you have two really great, I think it's Mrs. Mueller who's watching over her.
I believe it is, yes. And there is a credit for Frau Mueller in the film.
Yeah.
And they're both very patient with her, They're like, she has her fits, and they're like, you told us that we're not to listen to you when you have these fits. And they're nice about it, though. They're not like psych dicks about it, which
they're polite but firm.
Mm-hmm. They're not like, we'll stick you in a straitjacket or anything, which actually I find very interesting for that day and time. And that's probably because she was under the care of Dr. Mueller that she did not end up in a psychiatric hospital. But
and she was a rich woman.
Yes, daughter of a governor. So, but she eventually hits the peak of it, and then decides she wants to pretty herself up to see Frank one more time at her best, because she has figured out that she's either going to have to go to Imhotep or she's going to have to die, because she's getting weaker and weaker fighting it, I guess, and which is the same conclusion Dr. Mueller has made. And so they have this little conversation where Dr. Mueller, in a really kind of condescending, patronizing voice, is like, oh, so you understand more than I thought you'd understand. And she reveals that she understands probably even more than he understands, because she's like, I know that if I don't go to him, I'm going to die. But if I go to him, there's something that's not me that will be me then. And I don't want that. I want to keep me.
She's aware of the conflict inside. I guess you could say she's aware of the reincarnation soul within her.
Yes. Yeah, that she'll be overtaken by whatever this other soul is. So the plan, though, eventually is to let her go to him, and that they're not really clear on it. And then they were going to confront Imhotep or something. Then they don't really make the plan very clear.
They're hoping they do know that she'll be enough of a distraction that then they can get him or something.
It feels a little bit like their plan is get him, Ray.
Yeah, it's very much a look over there, get him. Yeah. So she of course does end up back in the museum with Imhotep and the Nubian, and he does bring. Go ahead. Sorry.
After Frank passes straight out, so she can just walk out of the house without anyone knowing that she did it.
Yeah.
Which, to put that point, he takes off the Isis medallion and sticks it around her doorknob. And that's how he ends up passing straight out, because Imhotep's able to get him from a distance, but he's young enough where he doesn't quite die from the curse, I guess.
And she just casually steps over his potential corpse.
Which I loved. I was like, I love that she's just like, meh.
Oh,
just walks on
happens.
over. I'm like, I mean, fair. Yeah.
Yep. Yes, good point. Excellent point. And of course, Mueller finds Wemple and brings him to, and eventually they make it to the museum. But by that time, she's already dressed in a horrible, horrible, horrible sequin reproduction of what they think that women look like in Egypt.
It was so
back in
bad.
ancient times.
Apparently, ancient Egyptian clothing consisted of strategically placed sequins.
Here's the deal. Is it Egyptian? No. Would I wear that outfit? 100%. 100%.
The only reason I would not wear that outfit is because I don't think the bands of sequence would cover the boobs on any level.
Oh, I would have to add boobs, but
I think it would. The costume of the appropriate size for you. For
I mean, we'd have to
and our
expand that out.
non-flat-chested
Appropriate
person.
size for me and my whatever. Would I wear it? Absolutely. Would I say it was Egyptian? Not even a little bit. I
No.
1920s reproduction.
Yeah.
It's Art Deco. I'm an Art Deco.
It's Art Deco cultural appropriation beyond. It's just
Oh, absolutely.
Which is funny because they have Imhotep wearing more reasonable looking clothing.
Absolutely. His looks more like, even to they had a lot of pleating. Pleating was actually very, very common. They found a whole lot of things with pleating. So he had a beautiful like pleated tunic that actually is pretty good. And then she's wearing
his headdress in the flashbacks.
Yeah, that wasn't the best, but yeah. But I mean, this the sequin bands were just a lot for me. I'm like,
I also love
it was like
her
they did
hair
really good with the skirt, and then they let's just take the strip of sequins.
It was, again, I would wear it 100%. It is not remotely historically accurate.
No.
It's one of those things where it's like, would I wear it? Yes, because it's fun. Because why not? And then I would probably do a burlesque show, because that's what it looks like. A burlesque dancer.
Yeah. It does, very much so.
So yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, she comes to as an Ankh Tsunamen, sorry, and
as a burlesque Egyptian.
Yes, and remembers, of course, Imhotep and that she loved him, and is not aware that she died at this point. So she's looking at her sarcophagus and is like, "Who was buried in my funeral things?" And
right, like,
and then he's like, "Oh, it's you, but it's just your dried corpse. Let's stick it in the fireplace and burn it." I'm like, that had to be a little traumatic for her.
Yeah.
He said it'll only hurt for a few seconds.
That soul is going to need some therapy in the next life.
Point blank told her it'll only hurt for a few seconds. Well,
that was his pitch, that he was going to kill her and she would be in pain for just a little bit of time, and then he was going to bring her back and she'd be immortal like him, and that he suffered so much for her. And it's like, but I didn't fucking ask you to, and I really don't want you to kill me and throw me in an embalming vat of fluid. I just don't want that.
I loved her,
but he's not listening.
Is that an embalming thing? And he's like, don't look at that. She's like, you're not putting me in that.
Yeah. And then he first sends the Nubian to kill her, when she starts getting a little feisty about not wanting to die this way. She sends the Nubian, and then she starts pleading with the Nubian, like, please, I am a priestess of Isis, don't kill me. And the Nubian kind of stops. And then Imhotep gets mad at the Nubian, and then he makes him cower away, and then he goes to try to kill her himself. And then she capitulates at this point. She's like, fine, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I kind of forgot the part where she really starts freaking out, and she realizes that he is not quite right. He grabs her wrist, and there's like mummy dust left afterwards. And she's like, this is an unclean thing. I am a priestess of Isis. You are some nasty dead thing. I might have loved you once, but no.
She's like,
but anyway, she starts She starts laying down to have this stuff happen. I guess trance is out for a bit, and in come our bumbling heroes, Wemple and Mueller.
The as I was like, yes, the ineffective heroes have arrived.
Now I can't remember if it was just right before they came in or right after, where she jumps off the altar and goes down before Isis and begs for the right spells, which I thought was an interesting continuation again, that the 99 one took for the right spell to help, and she starts pleading for it at first, Imhotep goes back and forth. I'm going to kill these people. I'm going to kill this woman. I'm going to kill these people. If he picked one set and done it, he probably would have won, but he just kept going with confusion there. And it's funny because he goes after the Wemple and Mueller at first with the ring thing, and then they end up doing the classic girl cowering thing that you usually see in those movies. And that just made me kind of happy because they were like, oh. Meanwhile, Tsunami's taking care of
Meanwhile,
business.
she's like, I gotta go save myself.
Yep.
And she does.
Yep.
She does.
Isis tells her the spells. She says the spells. Imhotep's coming after with a knife. She finishes the spell. He crumbles into a pile of dust and ash. And thus ends The Mummy, 1932. And then you presume after that Wemple and Helen get married and live unhappily ever after.
Actually, I presume that Helen and Wemple realize they have literally nothing in common and have barely spoken to each other for the whole thing. And she goes off and finds a nice, very, very rich man and is fine.
I was.
Now, do you presume that, or do you wish that that's how it would end?
I wish that's how it ends.
My wish is that she would hold on to herself and be like, you know what, dude, you've known me for like a minute and a half. You committed desecration and blasphemy. Fuck off.
Right? At least what is my middle name?
What's my favorite color?
Who are my parents?
I'm going to have some serious conversations before we go any further, because
what music do I like? What books do I like? You don't know any of this.
Yeah. All you know is that I was once possessed by a mummy. That's not good.
And that I resemble a dead woman you dug up. Okay.
Yeah. That's not
because I was her, but that's not the point.
That is not a good basis
for a
relationship.
But this movie was a great basis for other movies. So after this, you have several mummy offshoots that have Lon Chaney as the mummy and all that. But the next remake, I would say, of this movie is the 1959 Hammer one, which Christopher Lee was the mummy in that, and Peter Cushing was the main archaeologist in that one. And it did draw from this.
Yeah.
It was a Hammer film, yes. Hence
with all that entails.
But it went a little left of center from the original source.
Rails.
You still have the priest that was in love with the priestess who dies. The priest was going to, bring her back, gets caught, gets punished, same way. But he doesn't have it stuck out. He's stuck in a wall, but he's called forth. Basically, his whole point is he's called forth by a modern day worshiper of the god that they were supposed to worship, which you'll like this. The god in this movie was Karnak. So not actually even an Egyptian god, just the temple district in Egypt. But that's fine. And he's just called forth to kill the people that desecrated the tomb. But for some reason, it takes much longer. And you do have the insane person happen, but the insane person is the original archaeologist whose name was Dr. Banning. He's in there, he sees the scroll, he starts reading it, the mummy comes out, he sees the mummy, and he loses his mind, much like Norton does in the first one. And then his son, who's played by Peter Cushing, the younger Banning, takes over the dig, and his father's in a mental institution for the rest of his life, till they all end up back in London. And the guy who stole the scroll and was the worshiper of Karnak, which you don't really understand when or how he shows up on the scene. He just shows up and tells them not to go in the tomb. And then it's no context behind it. But they end up back in England. He ends up sicking the mummy on basically the Bannings and their Uncle Joe that was with them. And he gets through the old man Banning. He breaks into the mental institution. The mummy does, and kills him. And then he goes into the house with the younger Banning and Uncle Joe and kills Uncle Joe. And the mummy gets shot a couple times, and the younger Dr. Banning figures it out. Of course, his wife looks a lot like the priestess that died And so the end, it gets stopped because she looks like the priestess. She tells the mummy to stop, attacking her husband. The priest or whoever, the worshiper of Karnak who's controlling the mummy, tells the mummy to kill her. And the mummy's like, nope, and kills him instead. And then carries her off into the swamp. And she finally is like, put me down. And then gets out of the swamp. And then they shoot the mummy several times and he just fades into the swamp. So it doesn't take too much from the original, but there's enough elements in there that it's very similar. And it's, like I said, the scene where they're like, mummifying the heretic that was trying to raise it is very much taken from the original and worth watching just for the sheer hammer silliness of it, and Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. And plus, just to give Christopher Lee props. So again, back to old stunts and stuff. The squibs in his suit, the mummy suit, like serious gunpowder. He took some burns from that. He had to crash through a real freaking window, not fake glass.
Yeah. I remember there was a horror documentary that he was in where he was discussing that. And he's like, it was real glass.
I mean, can we just talk about like Christopher Lee, like one of the most badass men that ever existed, like for real.
Yes.
Like genuinely utter badass. So,
6'5". Like, I don't think you think about it, but you notice it in this movie.
The giant man. He was legitimately like military, so he has a lot of like famously there was a scene in Lord of the Rings that he was like, that's not what a noise that somebody who got stabbed would make. And
I know
Jackson was like, what do you mean? And he's like, I know because I've done it. And so they changed the scene because he's like, that's not accurate. And you're like, oh, that's
right.
Really,
he was in World War II.
Genuine badass. Seriously, look it all up, because he also was like in his 90s in a metal band. He's badass.
Yeah, that one. That's the thing that I love is he had his own metal band and he was in the 90s.
I'm not gonna lie.
True, same.
Badass. I know. I'm like, it was heartbreaking. It was not. It's heartbreaking.
It's not
because he lived to a ripe old age.
Yeah.
But
it's not unexpected.
The loss is sad. Let's put it that way. It's
heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Yeah. So if you don't know, listeners and people out there in the world, go and look up Christopher Lee and just appreciate all the amazing that is Christopher Lee, because he deserves everything. Also,
and then the 99
young man, he was hot as hell.
Oh yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, which, we've mentioned the 99 version repeatedly through this, and that's because it's so sourced from the 32 movie, but it, in my opinion, was just so much more amazing with what they did with it. They just made the most wonderful ensemble cast. And from a woman perspective, and a fat girl woman perspective, I love that apparently that director or that casting wanted more woman-sized women, because Rachel Weisz is heavier in that. She's neither her or Patricia Vasquez are fat on any terms. They're just natural looking. They're curvy. They look like they ate and didn't starve themselves for a role at all.
I think Rachel Weisz is probably one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood. Like
they look athletic.
Yes,
they look gorgeous. And this is not to take away from Rachel Weisz, but this is the first movie I think I really noticed her in. And then I saw her in Runaway Jury, and she looked emaciated to me in that, because she was like this big around, and she looked healthy and human to me in the Mummy movies. And I think that's more. It could be a reflection of what she wanted for her, and that's fine. Be your own beautiful self. But I also think it's a reflection of what Hollywood wants. Like, Hollywood's very restrictive on what women should be looking like to be beautiful in the size and the shape and the looks and the colors and the faces. And I loved that there was more in this cast, I
mean, even there's a moment in with the drunkard pilot where he's being led around by an Arabic woman who is like of size. Like, she's a big girl. And he's still like, hey, girl. The whole time.
Yeah.
I'm like,
the old pilot.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's just such a good film. And honestly, like, there's jokes about it, but truly, like, I can't even imagine how many of us figured out that we were probably bisexual by watching that film. Hello. Hi.
It's like
I'm one of those.
there's a meme online where it says my sexual orientation is the 1990 cast of The Mummy, and it just shows,
Patricia Velasquez,
yeah.
Rachel Weisz,
Patricia
Brendan
Velasquez,
Fraser,
Oded Fair.
I was gonna say
Oded Fair. Thank you.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, Oded Fair. Oh my God.
and-
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's probably why his name
my
is
Lord.
Fair.
But I would add in John Hannah. I'm sorry. Am I a
Yes.
fan?
He's the happy little, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love
Arnold
him.
Vosloo too was pretty nice to look at as well.
Seriously, when he was not like Mummy gross, he's a beautiful man. I mean, bald and beautiful.
Because they wanted somebody, his to have that great physicality for the role, and he just dialed that performance into an 11.
He was the kind of thick that you're like, oh.
Yep.
Bounce off of that, it'll work.
There's a shirt on TeePublic, which you can still buy our shirts on TeePublic, I'm just saying. But if you go to TeePublic, there's a shirt and it has a picture of Brendan Fraser and it says The Mummy, more like the daddy. And I want this shirt so bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my recommendation is watch the 32 version and watch the 99 version. Now, if you got extra time on your hands and want the humor of it, then watch the 32 version, the 59 version, and then the 99 version. But
certainly,
really, the 32 and the 99 are just beautiful.
I think that's the best way to view them, because you can see so much of the 1932 version in the 1991 or 1990.
Absolutely.
99 one.
Absolutely.
Now, interestingly,
and as far as I'm concerned, forget that Tom Cruise Mummy movie ever existed. It doesn't exist in our world. It's not real.
But what I thought was funny about the 99 version is they took names and stuff from the 32. Obviously,
they did. There was
Ardith
Professor
Faye, which
Pearson.
is Oded Fair's character, was the fake name that Imhotep used when he was walking around as immortal in the 32 one. I thought that was funny. And actually in the Mummy Returns, they reference the Nubian too, but they give him a name, thankfully. I forgot which name they give that character because I'm terrible. But played by another phenomenal actor, and that he's fleshed out a lot more. He's not just, the servant, he's actually a fighter. But yeah, I mean, you could just see that they keep taking little bits over, like it wasn't like they forgot their source piece at all.
No.
Which the 2017, they didn't source from the 32. I don't know what they sourced from at all.
Honestly, I think they just went with, let's remake a movie, The Mummy.
Lochna, that was
and
the
reboot the system. Yeah, and reboot the system. And so pretty much the only reason it had
Anne Rice's Mummy, because she wrote a book based on it.
Yeah,
but it doesn't seem like they did. And also,
I was going to say, rest in peace,
Anne Rice's dead.
Yes. She was a complicated figure. But
I was going to say,
I did enjoy her books when she let the editor do their job.
But I will be honest,
because there's some of those books in the middle.
Well, there was also that crazy Catholic period that was a little weird.
Yeah. That's where the complicated comes in.
Had a bit of a cry this morning because 14-year-old me loved the Vampire Chronicles, loved them. It was very close to my little goth heart. And I loved The Mummy. The Mummy was probably my favorite of her books. I actually loved The Mummy, Ramses the Damned. I thought it was a really good take on it. She wrote
I actually have not read it
recently. Her and Christopher.
I'll look it up.
And I haven't gotten my hands on it yet, but The Mummy at one point was my favorite book of hers. I read everything, and I mean everything.
You read those too.
I read all the porn, and I read the one about the little girl who falls in love with an adult man. I read them all. I don't like that I read them all, but I did it, and I was 14, so...
I did not read them all, but I did read The Mummy, and I did think it was one of her better books. And her first couple of vampire books I liked. Yeah, I think I tried to read the Beauty and the Beast series, but I don't know if I ever managed to.
Don't.
If I read it, I completely forgot about it. So either it traumatized me and I blanked it, or it was just so not interesting.
It's traumatizing.
But
yes,
I suppose there's a market for it. But I will tell you that at one point I was reading them in the living room and my mom was sitting across the room and I was blushing so hard that you would have thought I was going to die. I almost had a heart attack because I was like, if she knew what I was reading, she would just rip this out of my hands. Oh my God.
I did not come across those until my 20s.
I was far too young. I found them at a thrift store. Don't.
Oh.
But
Yeah,
anyway, sorry, we've digressed.
I was going to say
yeah.
we've digressed, but rest in peace, Anne Rice. And Ramsey Zidane was very good. And I also thought that they might have used her take on the mummy, which was a bit different, but they didn't.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Which is why I actually went through the 2017 Tom Cruise mummy. That was my whole point, because I thought maybe they were taking from it. And if they did, I didn't see it, or maybe it had been too long since I read the book, but it was, spare yourselves. Don't do it. Unless you want to, like, Mr. MST3K it, and then, or riff track it.
I no longer believe in Tom Cruise. He does not exist to me anymore.
Same. Hard same. He's a freaking lunatic.
I was gonna say he went a little off the rails for me, and I don't have to invest my time in him, and so I don't.
I only enjoy seeing him when he's basically playing himself, in a sense. So Tropical Thunder, where he plays the producer.
I've never seen it.
It's fucking hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. And I think it's because he's just letting all his crazy out. And then Rock of Ages, where he's playing the rock star, which I think again is just him letting himself into his crazy field, is also fucking hilarious. That's about the only things I would recommend you watch that he's in. Okay, and not for him, but
I'm a total liar and kind of a hypocrite at this point, because I still watch all the stupid Mission Impossibles because some of the supporting cast is really fun, and generally I have not watched them, but I do want to watch them because of the supporting cast, because there's a lot of people.
I think I've seen like
Simon Pegg is wonderful, so
well, yeah.
But again, I guess we should probably wrap this up. So.
I was gonna say
probably.
If you haven't watched the 99 Mummy, where the hell have you been and watch it?
Yeah,
I mean that's honestly. It. Just watch it. There's currently Brendanaissance, so Brendan Fraser is coming right back in, and like he's starting to act again. And what better way to celebrate the Brendanaissance than by watching the 99 Mummy? But again, watch the 32, then watch the 99. Mm-hmm. You can see where it all comes from. Even like certain words, death is only the beginning, literally scrolls across the 1932 in the beginning. They read you a little bit from the scroll, and it actually says death is only the beginning. And then of course they use that a whole bunch of the 90s.
Yeah, a lot in the 1999 one.
Yeah, I think it's actually death is a doorway, but the implication's the same.
Yeah.
In the 32 version.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to go back and watch. I have the DVD and the.
It might say both. It might say death is a doorway and death is only the beginning, but I recall death is a doorway. But I recall thinking that it meant the same thing. To me, it was the same thing. But it just in case somebody wants to get us later.
Well, I'm like,
didn't say that.
It's good. I mean, Boris Karloff is amazing. I would watch the 32 for Boris Karloff alone. Every time he hits the screen, he's magnetic. I would watch him 100 times over. And my favorite fact is that he started acting at 44 or hit it big.
Yeah.
44.
Yeah, he didn't start until late, and he has an extensive credit listing. He was in like something like 80 films before he was in The Mummy. Now, The Mummy was the one which catapulted him to large known fame.
Sure, it wasn't. Well, I mean, Frankenstein came out first. It was in 31, so I think
Frankenstein catapulted him.
Yeah,
and then The Mummy was written for him.
Yeah, I mean, this was a year later, so I mean, you can easily say it was either one of them. But
it excessive, but to the point that like in his older age, because of course he was injured badly on the set of Frankenstein. He could barely walk, and they would write roles specifically for him that would have him be sitting or in a wheelchair because he was such a magnetic presence on screen that they didn't think it was important that he walk.
He did a lot of narration work.
Oh, absolutely.
He did do. There's one very famous one. If you watch your Christmas specials, He did How the Grinch Stole Christmas. He was the narrator and the Grinch.
Absolutely. And actually there's a whole series of children's books he narrated because he loved children. So he narrated a bunch of children's books, and apparently you can find like albums of children's books narrated by Boris Karloff because he loved it so much.
Aw. He was in the original play production of Arsenic and Old Lace, because that was the gag of, you look like Boris Karloff, to the bad guy in that one, which if you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend it. It's Cary Grant. It does not have Boris Karloff in it, sadly.
Wrap us up again.
Yeah.
But yes, find them all.
Yeah.
Find them all.
Watch 32, watch 99. Rebecca, any final thoughts on The Mummy?
Similar. I think they're best when they're paired, the 32 and the 99. However, each one stands on its own merit, obviously. I think for within the context of the mores of the 1930s, that the actress did a wonderful job as the heroine.
Yes. And yeah, I can't add any more to it than what they have, because I've basically babbled about it the whole freaking time. And yeah, so watch these movies, enjoy. Feel free to write us, give us your thoughts, or don't, but you know. And with that,
let
this
us know you've watched
it. And I'm Jenny.
I'm Rebecca.
I'm Betsy.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Girls Go Schools podcast. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Girls Go Schools podcast, on Twitter at Girls Ghost Pod. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girls Go Schools podcast, and find our podcast on your favorite podcatcher.